The thunder of hooves echoed through the valley as Madeline Winters frantically urged her team of horses forward, the rickety wagon bouncing over the uneven terrain. Tears streaked down her dirt-smudged face as she cast one last glance at the town of Silver Creek fading into the distance behind her. The whispers and condemning stares of townsfolk had driven her away, their judgment burning hotter than the Arizona sun of 1875. "Go on faster," she pleaded with the horses, her hands gripping the reins until her knuckles turned white. The meager possessions she'd managed to pack rattled in the wagon bed, all that remained of the life she was leaving behind. Her heart nearly stopped when she heard the sound of galloping hooves approaching from behind. She didn't dare look back, fearing the worst, that someone from town had come to drive her humiliation deeper. The horsemen drew closer, and Madeline snapped the reins harder, desperate to outrun whoever pursued her. "Miss Winters, hold up there." The voice was familiar, deep, and commanding, with a gentle edge that had always made her heart flutter despite her best efforts to ignore it. Nathan Ryder, the one man in Silver Creek she couldn't bear to face. "Leave me be," she called back, refusing to slow the wagon. Nathan urged his chestnut stallion forward until he was riding alongside her wagon. His tan Stetson was pulled low over his eyes, but she could still see the determination in his expression. "You're not going alone," he said firmly, reaching for the bridle of her lead horse. "Don't you dare." Madeline warned, but it was too late. Nathan had already brought her team to a halt, the wagon lurching to a stop on the dusty trail. "What are you doing?" she demanded, hastily wiping tears from her cheeks. "I have nothing left in Silver Creek, nothing but shame." Nathan dismounted in one fluid motion, his spurs jingling as his boots hit the ground. At 30 years old, he was the most respected rancher in the county and the last person Madeline expected to come after her. "The whole town's talking about what happened at the social," he said, his voice low. "But they don't know the truth, do they?" Madeline looked away, the memory of that terrible night still fresh in her mind. The banker's son had cornered her behind the schoolhouse, his unwanted advances turning forceful. When she'd fought back, he'd stumbled into the punch table, causing a commotion that drew everyone outside. By the time the crowd gathered, George Turner had already spun his tale, claiming Madeline had tried to seduce him. "The truth doesn't matter," she said bitterly. "Not when a Turner says otherwise. His father owns half the businesses in town." "It matters to me," Nathan replied, stepping closer to the wagon. "And I know you, Madeline. You're 22 years old and have never done a dishonorable thing in your life." "Then you're the only one," she said, her voice breaking. "Even my own cousin asked me to leave her home. I have nowhere to go, Nathan. Please, just let me leave with what dignity I have left." Nathan's weathered face softened as he looked up at her. "I can't do that. Why not?" she challenged. "Because I know what it's like to be driven out by lies," he said quietly, "and because—" He hesitated, removing his hat and running a hand through his sandy brown hair. "Because I care about you, Madeline, more than I should." His confession hung in the air between them. Madeline had always felt something for the quiet rancher who brought the best cattle to market and tipped his hat to every lady in town. But she'd never imagined he might return those feelings. "You shouldn't say such things," she whispered. "Not now, not after what people are saying about me." "To hell with what people say," Nathan replied, his blue eyes flashing with conviction. "I've spent 5 years building my ranch into something worth having. I've got land, cattle, and a home that's just sitting there, too quiet and empty. Come with me, Madeline." She stared at him, stunned by his proposition. "You can't mean I'm not asking for anything improper," he clarified quickly. "I've got a cabin on my property where my ranch hand used to stay before he moved on. You can stay there, work in the house if you want. Earn your keep until you decide what you want to do, but I won't let you ride out of here alone with nowhere to go." Madeline hesitated, weighing her options. She had exactly $8.23 to her name, not enough to start over somewhere else. And the thought of traveling alone as a single woman frightened her more than she cared to admit. "People will talk," she said softly. People always talk, Nathan replied with a shrug. Let them. I know who you are, Madeline Winters, and that's good enough for me. Something about his steadfast belief in her broke through the wall of despair she'd built around her heart. Fresh tears welled in her eyes, but these weren't tears of shame or fear. Why would you do this for me? She asked. Nathan stepped closer, placing a hand on the wagon beside hers. Because sometimes a person just needs someone to stand beside them. I'm offering to be that someone for you. Madeline searched his face for any sign of deception, but found only earnest concern. Finally, she nodded. All right, but just until I can find work somewhere else. Relief flooded Nathan's features. That's all I ask. My ranch is about 5 miles east. We can be there before sundown if we head back now. He tied his horse to the back of her wagon and climbed up beside her. As he took the reins, his arm brushed against hers, sending an unexpected warmth through her body despite the cool autumn air. Thank you, she said softly as they turned the wagon around. Don't thank me yet, Nathan replied with a small smile. My cooking might send you running again. For the first time in days, Madeline felt the corners of her mouth turn up. It wasn't much, but it was something, a tiny spark of hope when she thought all light had gone out. The journey to Nathan's ranch passed in comfortable silence. Madeline was grateful he didn't press her for details about what had happened with George Turner. Instead, he pointed out landmarks along the way, telling her about the land he'd worked so hard to cultivate. There it is, he said as they crested a hill, revealing a sprawling property nestled in a verdant valley. A modest but well-built house sat near a small creek with a barn and several corrals nearby. Further back, a smaller cabin stood beneath a cluster of cottonwood trees. It's beautiful, Madeline breathed, taking in the peaceful scene. It's not much compared to some, Nathan said, but it's mine, free and clear. As they approached the main house, a black and white border collie came bounding toward them, barking excitedly. That's Scout, Nathan explained. Best cattle dog in 3 counties. The dog circled the wagon, tail wagging furiously as they pulled up to the hitching post in front of the house. Let me show you to the cabin first, Nathan said, helping Madeline down from the wagon. You can get settled while I see to the horses. The cabin was simple but clean, with a small stove, a bed with a fresh mattress, a table with 2 chairs, and a chest for clothing. A window overlooked the creek where willows swayed in the gentle breeze. It's not fancy, Nathan apologized, setting down her carpet bag. It's perfect, Madeline assured him, overwhelmed by his kindness. I don't know how to thank you. No need for thanks, he said, shifting uncomfortably. I'll bring the rest of your things. There's water in the bucket and firewood stacked outside. I'll come fetch you for supper in about an hour if that suits you. After he left, Madeline sat on the edge of the bed, hardly believing the turn her day had taken. That morning, she'd been preparing to leave everything she knew, facing an uncertain future alone. Now she had shelter, safety, and the surprising support of Nathan Ryder. She unpacked her few belongings, washed her face, and changed into a fresh dress. By the time Nathan knocked on her door, she'd managed to compose herself, though her nerves fluttered at the prospect of dining alone with him. The main house was cozy and well-maintained, if somewhat sparse in feminine touches. Nathan had prepared a simple meal of beans, cornbread, and coffee, apologizing for the lack of variety. I usually eat whatever's easiest after a long day, he explained as they sat at his kitchen table. I'm no chef, that's certain. It's delicious, Madeline assured him, though the beans were underseasoned and the cornbread slightly burned on the bottom. She was too grateful for his hospitality to mind such details. As they ate, Nathan told her about his daily routine on the ranch, rising before dawn, tending to the cattle, mending fences, and all the endless tasks that came with maintaining his land. He spoke with such passion about his work that Madeline couldn't help but be drawn in by his enthusiasm. What about you? He asked eventually. I know you were staying with your cousin since your parents passed. What did you do with your days? Madeline hesitated, suddenly aware of how little she had to offer. I helped in my cousin's millinery shop mostly. I'm good with a needle and thread. I can cook and keep house too, though I'm no expert. Those are valuable skills on a ranch, Nathan said earnestly. If you're willing, I could use help with the cooking and mending. I've been putting off fixing half my shirts because I'm terrible with a needle. I'd be happy to help, Madeline said, relieved to have a way to repay his kindness. It's the least I can do. As darkness fell, Nathan walked her back to the cabin, Scout trotting alongside them. The night was clear, stars sprinkled across the vast sky like diamonds on velvet. Thank you again, Madeline said as they reached her door, for everything. Get some rest, Nathan replied softly. Tomorrow will be better. She watched him walk back toward the main house, his tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. For the first time since the social, Madeline slept without tears. The following days established a rhythm that brought unexpected comfort to Madeline's shattered world. She rose early each morning, preparing breakfast for Nathan before he headed out to work the ranch. She spent her days cleaning the main house, mending clothes, and eventually taking over the cooking entirely. Nathan never pressed her about her plans to leave, and gradually, the idea of moving on began to seem less urgent. Each evening, they would sit on the porch after supper, watching the sunset while Scout dozed at their feet. Sometimes they talked about their days. Other times, they simply enjoyed the comfortable silence between them. A week after her arrival, Nathan returned from a trip to town with a package wrapped in brown paper. Thought you might need these, he said, handing it to her with uncharacteristic shyness. Inside, Madeline found fabric, thread, buttons, and other sewing supplies. Nathan, this must have cost. It's nothing, he interrupted. Consider it payment for fixing my shirts. She fingered the beautiful blue calico, touched by his thoughtfulness. Thank you. I've been wanting to make something new. Blue suits you, he said quietly, then quickly changed the subject, telling her about a new calf born that morning. As autumn deepened, so did their connection. Madeline found herself watching for Nathan's return each evening, her heart quickening at the sight of him riding toward the house. For his part, Nathan seemed to find more reasons to be near the house during the day, stopping in for coffee or bringing her wildflowers he'd found while checking the fence lines. One crisp morning in late October, Madeline was hanging laundry when she heard the sound of approaching horses. Her first thought was that Nathan had returned early from checking the herd, but as she turned, her blood ran cold. 3 riders were approaching from the direction of town, and one of them was George Turner. Panic seized her as she dropped the wet shirt she was holding and rushed toward the cabin. She had nearly reached it when she heard George call out, "Well, would you look at that? Seems the rumors were true after all." Madeline forced herself to turn and face them, lifting her chin despite the fear coursing through her veins. George sat atop his expensive black stallion, flanked by 2 men she recognized from town, both friends of the Turner family. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. George smirked, his handsome face twisted with malice. "Just passing by, checking on cattle prices with neighboring ranches." Imagine my surprise when I saw Nathan Ryder's laundry being tended by the very woman who tried to ruin my reputation. "I did no such thing," Madeline replied, anger beginning to replace her fear. "You know what really happened that night?" "Do I?" George dismounted, handing his reins to one of his companions. "What I know is that you're living on a bachelor's property, alone, doing his washing. Seems to confirm exactly what I told everyone about your character." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You should have just gone along with what I wanted that night. Would have been easier for everyone." "Get off this property," Madeline commanded, taking a step back. George laughed. "Or what? Your protector isn't here, is he? Does Ryder know what kind of woman he's harboring? The kind who doesn't tolerate trespassers, Turner?" Nathan's voice cut through the tension like a knife. He appeared from around the barn, rifle in hand, Scout at his heels. The dog's hackles were raised, a low growl rumbling in his throat. "We're just having a friendly conversation," George said, his confidence faltering slightly at Nathan's stern expression. Doesn't look friendly to me, Nathan replied, moving to stand beside Madeline. State your business or move on, George's eyes narrowed. I came to talk cattle prices, but I see you're otherwise occupied. Didn't take you for the type to pick up damaged goods, Ryder. Nathan's jaw tightened, but his voice remained controlled. The only damaged goods I see are standing right in front of me, Turner. A man who'd force himself on a woman and then lie about it isn't worth the dirt under my boots. George's face flushed with anger. You're believing the word of a choose your next words very carefully, Nathan interrupted, raising the rifle slightly. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then George forced a laugh, backing toward his horse. Keep her, Ryder, you two deserve each other, but don't expect any business from my father's bank when you need a loan next season. I don't do business with Turner Bank, Nathan replied coolly. Never have, never will. George mounted his horse, his companions shifting nervously. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Nathan said firmly. Ride out now and don't come back. The three men turned their horses and rode away, George casting one last venomous glance over his shoulder. When they were out of sight, Madeline's legs nearly gave way beneath her. Nathan caught her arm, steadying her. Are you all right? He asked, concern etched on his features. She nodded, though she felt anything but all right. I'm sorry. I've brought trouble to your door. Nathan guided her to the porch steps, setting aside his rifle. You didn't bring anything. That snake slithered here on his own. He'll spread more lies in town, Madeline said miserably. About both of us now. Let him, Nathan replied, his hand still on her arm. Truth has a way of coming out eventually. Madeline looked up at him, struck by his unwavering support. Why aren't you concerned? The Turners are powerful enemies to make. Nathan's expression softened. Because some things are worth standing up for, Madeline. Some people are worth any risk. The way he looked at her then, with such tender concern, made her breath catch. Without thinking, she reached up and touched his cheek, rough with a day's growth of beard. Thank you, she whispered, for a heartbeat. Neither moved. Then Nathan covered her hand with his own, turning his face slightly to press a kiss against her palm. I should finish the laundry, Madeline said softly, suddenly aware of how close they were. Nathan nodded, releasing her hand reluctantly. And I should check the north pasture. Will you be all right here alone? Yes, she assured him. Scout will keep me company, won't you, boy? The dog wagged his tail in response, and Nathan smiled. He's a good judge of character. He knew you belonged here from the first day. As Nathan rode off, Madeline found herself pondering his words. Belonged here. The idea settled in her heart like a seed taking root. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge, Madeline finally gathered the courage to ask what had been on her mind since George's visit. Why did you say you don't do business with Turner Bank? Everyone in Silver Creek does. Nathan was quiet for a long moment before answering. When I first came to these parts, I was just a cowhand with dreams of my own place. I saved every penny for 5 years, and when I had enough for a down payment on this land, I went to Turner Bank for a loan to cover the rest. He paused, his profile strong against the darkening sky. Old man Turner took one look at me, a nobody with calloused hands and patched clothes, and laughed me out of his office, said I'd never amount to anything worthy of his investment. That's terrible, Madeline said softly. Nathan shrugged. It was the best thing that could have happened to me. I was angry enough to work twice as hard. Found a smaller bank in the next county that took a chance on me, paid off my loan 2 years early just to prove Turner wrong. Madeline smiled, admiring his determination. You certainly did that. My point is, Nathan continued, turning to look at her, a Turner's opinion isn't worth much to me, never has been. Even when that opinion turns the whole town against someone, she asked quietly. Nathan reached over and took her hand, his touch sending warmth through her despite the cool evening air. Especially then. The next morning, Madeline woke to the sound of raised voices. She dressed quickly and hurried outside to find Nathan arguing with Sheriff Mills at the front of the house. What's happening? She asked, Wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders against the autumn chill, the sheriff removed his hat, looking uncomfortable. "Morning, Miss Winters. I'm afraid I'm here on official business." Nathan's expression was thunderous. "Tell her what kind of official business brings you all the way out here at dawn." Sheriff Mills cleared his throat. "George Turner has filed a complaint. He's claiming that Mr. Ryder threatened him with a rifle on his own property yesterday." "That's a lie," Madeline exclaimed. "George and his friends came here uninvited. They were harassing me when Nathan arrived." "Be that as it may," the sheriff continued, "the Turners are insisting I investigate. They're claiming part of this ranch actually belongs to them due to some boundary dispute." Nathan's laugh was harsh. "A boundary dispute that never existed until yesterday. My deed is clear, Sheriff, and you know it." The sheriff had the decency to look embarrassed. "I know, Ryder, but the Turners are threatening to bring in the circuit judge if I don't act." "Let them," Nathan replied defiantly. "My papers are in order." Sheriff Mills sighed, replacing his hat. "I'd rather not see this escalate. The Turners can make life difficult for everyone involved. More difficult than trying to drive an innocent woman out of town with lies," Nathan challenged. "More difficult than fabricating property disputes to bully people who stand up to them." The sheriff glanced at Madeline, a flicker of doubt crossing his weathered features. "Is that true, Miss Winters, about what happened at the social?" Madeline straightened her shoulders, finding courage in Nathan's unwavering support. "Yes, Sheriff. George tried to force himself on me behind the schoolhouse. When I fought back, he lied to protect himself. Ask Miss Peterson, the schoolteacher. She was nearby and heard everything, though she was too afraid of the Turners to speak up." Sheriff Mills considered this, his expression troubled. "That changes things. I'll have a word with Miss Peterson." "You do that," Nathan said firmly. "And tell the Turners that if they set foot on my property again, they'll be the ones facing charges." After the sheriff departed, Madeline turned to Nathan, concern etched on her face. "This is getting worse. Maybe I should leave, go somewhere the Turners can't reach, and let them win." Nathan shook his head. "No, Madeline, running won't solve this. We need to stand our ground." "We," she echoed softly. Nathan took her hands in his expression earnest. "Yes, we, unless you truly want to leave. If you do, I won't stop you this time." Madeline looked at the man before her, strong, principled, kind, and realized with sudden clarity that leaving was the last thing she wanted. "I don't want to go," she admitted, "but I'm afraid of what the Turners might do next." Nathan squeezed her hands gently. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together." The words hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Madeline felt a shift in her heart, like pieces of a puzzle finally falling into place. "Together," she agreed softly. Over the next few days, tension lingered like storm clouds on the horizon. Nathan took to carrying his rifle when checking the far pastures, and Madeline found herself starting at every unexpected sound. 4 days after the sheriff's visit, Nathan rode into town to buy supplies and seek news. He returned with a grim expression that made Madeline's stomach knot with dread. "What happened?" she asked as he unsaddled his horse. "The Turners have been busy," he replied, his voice tight with anger. "They've convinced half the town that I'm harboring you for immoral purposes and the other half that I've encroached on their land." "Oh, Nathan," Madeline sighed, her heart sinking, "this is all my fault." "None of it is your fault," he corrected firmly, "but there's more. Sheriff Mills spoke to Miss Peterson like he promised. She confirmed your story about what happened at the social." A flicker of hope sparked in Madeline's chest. "She did?" Nathan nodded, a smile finally breaking through his stern expression. "She did. And apparently she wasn't the only one who saw what really happened. 2 of the young boys who were playing behind the schoolhouse saw everything too. Their parents were too afraid of the Turners to let them speak up before, but with Miss Peterson coming forward, they've changed their minds." Madeline's eyes filled with tears of relief. "So people know the truth." "They're beginning to," Nathan confirmed, leading her toward the porch. "The tide is turning against the Turners. Old Man Turner even stormed out of the bank when people started whispering as he passed." For the first time since that terrible night, Madeline felt the weight of shame lifting from her shoulders. She sank onto the porch steps, overwhelmed by emotion. "I never thought this day would come," she whispered. Nathan sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "There's something else I need to tell you, Madeline." She looked up, noticing the sudden nervousness in his demeanor. "What is it?" "I've been thinking about what you said when you first came here about staying just until you could find work elsewhere." Madeline's heart clenched painfully at the thought that he might be asking her to leave now that her name was being cleared. "I understand if you think it's time for me to go," she began, but Nathan interrupted her. "No, that's not what I'm saying at all." He took a deep breath, his blue eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I'm asking you to stay. Not as my housekeeper or my friend, but as my wife." The world seemed to still around them as his words registered. "Your wife?" she echoed, scarcely believing what she'd heard. Nathan nodded, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "I know it's sudden, and maybe I should have waited, done this proper with courting and such. But these past weeks with you here have shown me what I've been missing all these years. This place was never really a home until you came, Madeline." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small gold ring with a modest pearl set in the center. "I bought this in town today. It was my mother's, but I had it sized for you, if you'll have me, that is." Tears spilled down Madeline's cheeks as she looked at the beautiful ring, then back at the equally beautiful man offering it to her. "I don't have much to give you except this land, this home, and my promise to stand beside you all the days of my life," Nathan continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But everything I have is yours if you want it." "Yes," Madeline whispered, her heart so full it felt as though it might burst. "Yes, Nathan, I want nothing more than to be your wife." Joy illuminated his face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he cupped her face in his calloused hands and kissed her with such tenderness that Madeline felt it in the very depths of her soul. When they finally parted, both breathless and smiling, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Madeline Winters. Have since the first time I saw you at church 3 years ago, sitting by the window with sunlight in your hair." Madeline's eyes widened in surprise. 3 years ago. "Why did you never say anything?" Nathan smiled sheepishly. "Didn't think a fine lady like you would look twice at a rough rancher like me. Besides, your cousin kept you surrounded by those fancy town boys every time I worked up the courage to approach." "Those fancy town boys never interested me," Madeline admitted, caressing his cheek. "There was always a certain quiet rancher who caught my eye, though I never dared hope he'd notice me." Nathan laughed softly. "We've wasted a lot of time, haven't we?" "We have the rest of our lives to make up for it," she replied, leaning in to kiss him again. They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Silver Creek. To Madeline's surprise and joy, many townsfolk attended, offering congratulations and apologies in equal measure. Miss Peterson stood as her witness, while Nathan's neighboring rancher served as his. George Turner and his family were noticeably absent, having suddenly decided to take an extended trip to San Francisco after the sheriff began a formal investigation into George's behavior at the social. As Nathan and Madeline exchanged vows, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the wooden floor. Madeline wore a dress of blue calico that she'd sewn from the fabric Nathan had given her, with white lace trim she'd added from her own stores. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared, beaming at the couple. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Ryder." Nathan didn't hesitate, drawing Madeline into his arms and sealing their vows with a kiss that promised a lifetime of love and devotion. Later, as they rode back to the ranch in their wagon, now truly their home, Madeline leaned against her husband's shoulder. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, his arm securely around her waist. "I'm thinking about the day you stopped my wagon," she replied with a smile. "How desperate I was to leave, and how grateful I am that you didn't let me go alone." Nathan pressed a kiss to her temple, his voice warm with emotion. "Best decision I ever made." As the ranch came into view, Scout ran out to greet them, barking joyfully. The setting sun cast a golden glow over the land that was now their shared legacy, a place where shame had been replaced by honor, fear by courage, and loneliness by love. "Welcome home, Mrs. Ryder," Nathan said softly as he helped her down from the wagon. Madeline looked up at her husband, her heart full to overflowing. "I am home," she replied. "I've been home since the moment you rode after my wagon and said those words that changed everything." Nathan smiled, remembering, "You're not going alone." "And I never will be again," Madeline whispered as he drew her into his arms, the promise of their future stretching before them like the endless western sky.